It was a Tuesday morning. I was leaving for work, a little early, like always. Everything felt normal. I closed the front gate, and as I turned to leave, I glanced at the wall of my house. The wall was painted white. Oh, but someone had graffitied it. And the word they wrote, I swear, it made me dizzy. Written on the wall of my house, in huge capital letters, was the word cuckold. They had even used black paint. I felt a chill down my spine. I started to tremble. I didn't even go to work. I stormed back inside and found my wife, Jessica, getting ready. Before she could even ask, the words just came out. "What have you been up to, Jessica?" "They're calling me a cuckold. Tell me, what have you been up to?" She just stared back at me, her eyes wide, and gave me a shrug. It was a Saturday, 5 p.m. I was just getting home from work. My brother's car was parked out front. Either he had come to talk to me, or his wife had taken the car and come for a chat with my wife. That happened all the time. But as I came through the gate, I heard raised voices inside. A man's voice and a woman's voice. Honestly, I was shocked. What was happening? I couldn't understand what they were saying at first, because they were talking over each other, their voices muffled. But as I got closer to the door, I could clearly hear David saying, "Don't you dare say it's a lie." I saw it. Do you understand, Jessica? I've already told you I'm nobody's fool. You know, it was completely out of character, completely out of line. I was trying to figure out what they were talking about. My brother, my wife. I could have just stood there quietly to see if I could hear more, but before I knew it, I'd walked through the door. The moment they saw me, they both stopped arguing instantly. They had the strangest looks on their faces. "What's going on here, guys?" I asked. "Forget it." My brother just lowered his head, while my wife said it was nothing and immediately headed for the kitchen. But how could it be nothing? They were both so agitated. I saw it, I swear. And they were arguing right in truth, it wasn't the first time this had happened. I had seen those two giving each other cold shoulders a few times before. I naturally asked what was going on, the reason for all the drama. And then, in a low voice, my brother said, "It's nothing. It's your wife. She calls me to go have a beer, and then she gives me the cold shoulder." Then he said to me, "You know what? I've even lost the desire to go out. Let's leave it for another day." And with that, he just turned his back and left. He didn't even kiss my son goodbye, poor kid, still scared. Later, I went to talk to my wife. She still had that strange look on her face. I didn't even have to ask. She immediately started talking, irritated. "That brother of yours gets on my nerves, he's unbearable." I decided not to ask any more questions, to leave it as it was. I took my shower, ate something, and then went to rest. She kept that angry face on the whole time, mad at my brother. It all seemed like a completely pointless argument. Anyway, the days went by, and the incident was forgotten, at least by me. But the situation remained strange. And then, 2 weeks later, to my astonishment, guess what happened? I got a call on my cell phone from my sister-in-law, Emily. She was desperate, on the other end of the line, telling me that David was all beaten up. My God, what do you mean? What happened? Was it a robbery? I don't know. All I know is he's all hurt. Can you please tell me what's going on? Who beat him up? She was crying more than she was talking. I had to go to their house to talk in person. She told me that David had been beaten up by the construction workers who were doing a job next to our house, but she didn't know why, because he refused to tell her. He simply said he had gone to my house looking for me, got into a disagreement with the workers. They started arguing in the street, and it ended in a fight. But there were several of them, and he ended up getting beaten. He wouldn't even tell me what happened. He just said they got annoyed with him, started insulting him, making crude jokes, and he didn't want to go into detail. Look, that seemed very strange to me. I knew the construction workers from the site next door. They always treated me with the utmost respect. I mean, I didn't know them, but they didn't seem like violent people, much less the type to attack someone for no reason. It was all very weird. As soon as I got home, Jessica came to me, all worried, asking if I had news about my brother, because she had seen the fight in the street. I told her he was okay, but stubborn as always. I asked if she knew the reason for the fight, but she shook her head no. She said when she saw it, the chaos had already started, and it was after that incident that even stranger things started to happen. The fight was on a Saturday. On the following Tuesday, as I was leaving for work, I came across a situation that made my legs go weak, I swear. I was closing the gate when I glanced at the wall. The wall was painted white, but someone had graffitied my wall, and the word they wrote, I swear, it made me dizzy. Written on the wall of my house, in huge capital letters, was the word cuckold. They had even used black paint. I felt a chill down my spine. I started to tremble. It was completely clear. That word drew anyone's attention. Black on white. Cuckold. What do you mean? The bastard who painted that. My God. I must have stood there on the street like an idiot for 10 minutes, motionless, just staring at that wall, not knowing what to think. I ended up missing the bus and didn't even go to work. I decided to go back home. I found Jessica already up. When she saw me walk back through the door, pale, she asked what had happened. But you know when you try to speak, and you just can't. All I could manage to ask was, "What have you been up to, Jessica?" "They're calling me a cuckold. Tell me, what have you been up to?" I was so distraught, I didn't even notice her reaction. She said a bunch of things that, honestly, I couldn't understand. I was so upset, so nervous, so stressed, that I grabbed her by the arm and practically dragged her outside to show her the wall. At first, she also stood paralyzed, staring at the wall with wide eyes. Then she looked at me, shrugged, and said she didn't know who did it, much less why. She even added, as if it were an explanation, "It's just a prank." Some kid's prank. A kid's prank. Decidedly, it was not a kid's prank. No, it was not. I looked at my wife's face and kept asking myself if she had done something behind my back. Let's be honest, nobody would graffiti that on my house for no reason. If it was my neighbor's wall, I'd think his wife was cheating. But this was my wall. The cuckold was me. I had to skip work. I needed to cover up that graffiti. Imagine people passing by and seeing that hideous word painted on my wall. I went to the main avenue, waited for the paint store to open, and bought a can. But as I started painting over it, I noticed the neighbors, the construction workers next door. I could feel them whispering, some looking right at me, clearly making fun of me. One of them even shouted to another, loud enough for me to hear, "Hey, did you know today is Cuckold's Day?" And they all burst out laughing. I couldn't take it. The jokes didn't stop, so I had to go over there and confront them. The blood had rushed to my head. I asked them what their problem was, but they just kept making jokes. "What's wrong, neighbor? Getting a little nervous?" "You're not a tame cuckold, are you? You're an angry one." I was so close to a fight, but I managed to calm myself down. In those moments, you thank God you don't own a gun. Because if I did, I would have put an end to at least 3 of those guys, one by one. Could it have been one of them who painted my wall? It had to be. My life turned into a living hell from that day on. Naturally, I continued to suspect my wife. How could I not? That word painted on my wall. Those men mocking me. The situation at home became unbearable. We started arguing every single day. For me, it was obvious she had done something behind my back to justify all of this. We could barely look at each other without starting a fight. We weren't even sleeping in the same bed anymore. She had moved to our son's room. She swore up and down that she had done nothing, that I needed to trust her instead of listening to unoccupied construction workers. But by that point, I was already contaminated by suspicion. And then, 3 weeks later, as I was stewing in this agony, the unimaginable happened. On a Sunday, I was home alone, sprawled on the sofa, lost in my thoughts, when my cell phone started buzzing. Message after message. It was from my sister-in-law, Emily. Not text messages, but audio and photos. The first photo I opened made my whole body seize up. I felt a cold sweat. It was a screenshot of a conversation between my wife, Jessica, and my brother, David. My jaw hit the floor when I opened that first message. From what I could understand, it wasn't a recent thing. Jessica and David had been exchanging explicit messages, even nudes. They were sending them to each other. The two of them were having an affair. I, with my head in the clouds. It took me a while to realize what was happening right under my nose. Then I opened an audio message from Emily. "I found this on David's phone," she said. "Take a look at this disgrace." It was a flood of photos, screenshots of conversations that my sister-in-law had taken from my own brother's phone. I don't know how I didn't die of a heart attack right then and there. Shaking, I called Emily. She told me she had been suspicious for a while, that her husband, my brother, was having an affair. She just could never have imagined that his lover was my wife. She had taken his phone and found all of it. My God, my wife, and my brother. That's why he got beat up by the construction workers. He must have said something they didn't like, and they confronted him. According to Emily, she had already kicked David out of the house, thrown his clothes out the window. Naturally, I went to my mother-in-law's house to settle this. But by then, Jessica already knew the bomb had exploded. The shameless woman didn't even let me in through the gate. And maybe it was for the best. I was so out of my mind. Imagine discovering your brother is sleeping with your wife and your wife with your brother. Anyone would go crazy. Jessica never had the courage to give me an explanation, to look me in the eyes. Not her, not that bastard of my brother. Neither of them had the decency to come talk to me, to at least apologize. And the most curious part? Jessica had the nerve to tell a relative of mine, who later told me, that it was all my fault, that I didn't give her love, or affection, or pleasure. And that's why she sought it in the arms of my own brother. After betraying me, after dragging my name through the mud, what else was there for her to do? My God, besides taking a knife and sticking it in my back?